Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Monday, January 5th, 2026. I have to be careful. It's our first show back. I keep writing Maduro on my checks, but it's no longer the case that that's accurate. Also, nobody writes any checks anymore. We know this thing. This is what we do. Every New Year's return, we're back live on the air. The cold, still lingering a little bit. Venezuela, still lingering a little bit. What chaos, huh? I don't think we've ever been treated to clearer weekend chaos than this weekend. And of course, you might imagine that will occupy a lot of our time. We might try to figure out a way to go in another direction, but no, not really. There is some other news as it happens, and you have to pay attention to it because otherwise you can't satisfy the people who are sure that Venezuela is only a distraction from something. And it may be, but we can't let it distract us. And of course, people enjoyed themselves this weekend saying, the worst thing about this Venezuela invasion is that the Jeffrey Epstein files haven't been released yet, and they're in violation of federal law. That is also true. That an ongoing story. There are many ongoing stories, many stories starting up, lots of angles on this story. I don't know how much we're going to be able to just read in its entirety, though. There are a couple of key articles that showed up all over the place in all of the social media discussion of what happened over the weekend from different angles. Different parts of it fascinated different people. So there might be a few articles that we run all the way through, but I don't know if it's going to be that kind of a day. We're just going to have to kind of get the gist of things. I put a lot of things away in Instapaper for their headlines or with the social media posts that went with them, just grabbing the excerpt that the person thought was interesting. And 2 hours is not going to be enough to deal with this one topic. However, we have 10. So we'll start off with, why don't we let Greg organize us for the morning? Of course, the way to treat the Venezuela news as the mainstream traditional media folks have done it is as a horse race, I suppose. And so we'll use this as our intro today, our fanfare. So thanks to Scott for forwarding that one. Horse race politics has got to be. Is the Venezuela invasion, Greg, so crazy that it just might work? I don't hear you. So it's so crazy that your microphone won't work. How about that?
Well, I was just enjoying the fanfare.
Oh, okay.
Thinking about guys and dolls, and I got the horse right here.
Yeah.
Can do.
Perfect. Got to go see a man about a horse. The man is in Venezuela, and I got to take him back here.
In Venezuela. We don't know where he is now.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. Actually, we do know where Maduro is because Trump invited him for tea in the detention center in Brooklyn, same place that R. Kelly and P. Diddy get to visit when there are questions about whether or not they should be free. So it's a fairly notorious place.
Terrific.
But my Republican friend Evan Siegfried tweeted the other day, as a native New Yorker, I found this funny, you may not. But New York City authorities should also charge Maduro for all of the unpaid parking tickets of Venezuelan diplomats. U.S. foreign policy should be reoriented to enact regime change on countries that hide behind diplomatic immunity to avoid paying for their flagrant parking violations in New York. See, if you're a native New Yorker, this bothers you more than anything Maduro is actually doing in Venezuela.
I can see
why.
The
guy parks right in front of the UN in a no parking zone and thinks he's going to get away with it because they're goddamn international scofflaws.
Yeah, certainly a local take on the problem. Regime change for parking tickets. I don't see why not.
Why not?
It's more reason than we had this time.
Maduro was picked up and brought to the U.S. on charges because of gun violation or something.
Yeah. Drugs and guns, which
so why not
are nasty,
What's the
but
difference?
Hey. Yeah, I mean, in this country, sure, right. I mean, everybody has the right to park wherever they want and carry whatever they want, unless we don't like you, in which case,
So the Washington Post has a fairly significant article about this, which I thought was quite interesting. U.S. plan to run Venezuela clouded in confusion. In Washington and Caracas, the vision for administering Venezuela in the weeks and months ahead appears uncertain, stubbornly complex. This is one of those situations. I really am struggling for an analogy here. Imagine you're a bull in a farmer's, lot.
Okay.
Farm.
That's
and
bullshit.
Surrounded by flies, and the bull keeps swatting flies.
Right.
And you're an international fly analyst trying to figure out what the pattern is.
Yeah. All right.
And
Maybe.
the answer is there isn't one.
Yeah, I guess
Trump has
so.
no coherent foreign policy. This is a rackification of foreign policy here. And what he did is he said, all right, Marco Rubio, you're in charge of this. And Rubio said, well, I'll be in charge of it if it goes okay. But if it doesn't go okay, it's J.D. Vance. And Vance said, I had nothing to do with it. Why not Stephen Miller? That's what this Washington Post piece says. Rubio is too busy administering all these other things.
Well, he has 9 jobs. That's true.
And therefore, we need Stephen Miller to run Venezuela.
Now that, I guess I would have, I saw this article. This is the very one I had in mind that I might have to read all the way through because it was excerpted by 10 different people for 10 different things. And I wondered, how do they, I didn't read it yet. So I kind of figured, it actually struck me that, they landed on Miller because Miller probably said, I'll do it. And the whole reason we're doing this invasion is because I want to do it.
Nobody else will do anything with him. So he's got 8 people he has to assign everything.
Yeah. I guess I was surprised that he wasn't the first choice because he would have forced him. There's a chance to subjugate an entire Latin American country.
Rubio's making the case that this is all about Cuba. And there's, of course, a piece in the Washington Post article
that is true.
about
He is saying that. Yeah.
In a statement,
Oh my
Cuban
God.
President Miguel Diaz-Canel said the 32 dead were members of the Cuban military and interior, the first apparent confirmation of long-standing U.S. assertions that Cuba's communist government, which has received oil and economic support from Venezuela, provides personal security for Maduro. So I don't know if they had a fine place for them in the Brooklyn jail. I don't know if that works. I guess they didn't have room, so they just killed them.
Yeah. I understand the number has gone to 80 people apparently killed, and no word that I had seen about how they differentiated between who was who, but the initial numbers were 40.
These are the first reported non-U.S. casualties. Yeah. There may be others.
I'm certain.
Right. And then there was a Chinese delegation that was there that was supposed to meet with Maduro. They were embarrassed. That'll go well.
Yeah, well, that is embarrassing. Hey.
Right. And then there's the part about Stephen Miller.
That guy
but
got
here's
kidnapped.
The thing. Delcy Rodriguez, who was the vice president, is now the acting president.
That's right.
Trump says, she'll cooperate. She says, this is ridiculous and illegal. You guys have to get out of here.
Yeah, but not that she wouldn't cooperate.
Our people deserve peace and dialogue, not war. And, of course, people assume she did cooperate, and she was the inside finger person who told everybody where Maduro was so you could pick him up.
There's some very good, I hope I still can find it. I parked so many things here. I'm remembering things that I'm now having to scroll 4 or 5 pages to find. But Miami Herald, home of, I guess, maybe the largest Venezuelan exile community, as they will call themselves, had some excellent reporting on the subject, as they do in a lot of things that we're supposed to be talking about, like Epstein.
Well, I'm sure they were thrilled that Maduro was gone, but
we'll go to that.
That the opposition leader was thrown under the bus, and that's also part of the story here. And this is one of the more interesting parts.
Okay.
The day
I'm
before,
glad for that.
Trump had effectively dismissed the prospects of Venezuela's democratic opposition, including Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado, whose standing candidate Edmundo Gonzalez, who's now, I think, in Spain, won more than 2/3 of the vote in an election last year that saw Maduro refuse to leave office. And what Trump said, so this party that Machado leads won 2/3 of the vote. Yes. She wins the Nobel Peace Prize. And Trump's quote is, it'd be very tough for her to be the leader. She doesn't have the support or the respect within the community.
Yes, he does say that.
Now, associates of Machado, who covertly escaped Venezuela last month with the help of the U.S. to attend the Nobel Prize ceremony in Norway, were caught off guard by Trump's comment, according to a person close to her team. She urged the Venezuelan diaspora to rally, but it's very hard to do when she's not in the country. Trump's remarks, said somebody, a Venezuelan opposition leader, said, were difficult for many in the opposition movement to hear, but in every transition you have to swallow some bitter pills. Two people close to the White House said the president's lack of interest in boosting Machado, despite her recent efforts to flatter Trump, stemmed from her decision to accept the Peace Prize, an award the president has openly coveted.
No, wrong thing to do.
Acceptance of the prize was an ultimate sin, said one of the people. In this piece.
If
she had
was
turned it down and said, I can't accept it because it's Donald Trump's, she'd be president of Venezuela today, this person said.
That might be very true.
Right. I mean, it's so stupid. You'd say, come on, but no, not with these people. It's probably true.
Yeah. I mean, it is incredibly dumb. And I did see Ann Applebaum, commenting on it. Among other things, that's just not how it works. You can't give it to someone else. I mean,
that is how it works.
Oh, okay. I figured if you have the power, but I think it's normally not the way it works. However, I did ask, what if you have
how it works.
What if you have the power to arrest the person who won and you have a Sharpie? Then can you do it? And the answer is, I guess so. Or if it's, I can't give it to everybody, but I can kill everybody who says I didn't.
What if you have the power to arrest the person in charge, and then you also continue to have the power to arrest the next person in charge if you don't like
Seize everybody. Who says I didn't win? You're under arrest.
Yeah,
did it work?
Yeah, we tried it here in the U.S. We only partially succeeded, but this is how we really want to do it. So
it's unbelievable. And I mean, I guess after the whole weekend went by and I'm seeing one crazy story after another, I guess I really reached the point where I really have no words to add to this. I don't know what to say about it when it got to the part where it was like, the world just watched someone win the Nobel Peace Prize for campaigning for Maduro's ouster and leading that effort and then being recognized by the world as presumably the next person in line. And Trump said, no, I'm embarrassed by this person because they stole my Nobel Peace Prize, which I was going to get from bombing them.
So I'll embrace Delcy Rodriguez, the vice president, because she's on our side, and she says this is terrible and you shouldn't be doing this. And Trump says, well, I don't even know who she is.
Yeah. Anyway, the Miami Herald has some great coverage. I might have to dive in at some point later on and just read off some of the headlines of the stories. They have, because they have that big exile community, they have the nuanced stories of, well, I'm Venezuelan and I'm happy, except for this part, which I'm unhappy about. Oh, yeah? Well, I'm Venezuelan and I'm totally unhappy, except for this part that I'm happy about. Okay, interesting. Also, they had news that the vice president there may have contacted the Trump administration through back channels in Qatar, where the money is and where they listen to people because they have money, even though they're kind of brown. They may have used this diplomatic back channel to say, listen, I'm in. If you take him, I'll be your go-to person. I don't know if she knew how to get rid of the...
Trump said that
Machado,
and he told everybody that, and he was completely embarrassed.
Right. Remember, it's a secret.
That's supposed to be behind the scenes. What you're supposed to say in public is, we hate this, we're in solidarity with the Venezuelan people,
right?
And then still let you do what you want to do. You're not supposed to say that part out loud, but he did anyway.
He did, right. Reading the stage directions out loud once again. Okay.
But the thing is, it's going to be a lot of people's first response, I think, to say, oh, blood for oil.
Yeah.
They'll welcome
wrong.
us as liberators.
No one has said
Iraq
that yet.
2.0. It's not.
I have seen that said too.
As incoherent and poorly planned as Iraq was,
yes,
this is so much worse. This is so much more poorly planned. This has no plan. This is the bull in the farmer's field swatting flies. They have no idea what they're doing. Trump went to the oil community and said, give me billions of dollars from my ballroom, and I'll let you back in Venezuela and you can have the oil.
Yeah.
The problem is The oil in Venezuela, and there's plenty of it, they probably have more than anybody, it's something called heavy crude, which means it is really difficult to turn into gas. So if you think your gas is now $1 as of tomorrow, good luck. It's going to take $100 billion of investment in a decade to get them up to speed, and by then oil may be passé. We don't know. But the fact of the matter is that Trump doesn't know or care about this. He thinks it's 1950, and he thinks Drill Baby Drill is a documentary, and he thinks that that's what you do. So how it's going to work out in the end, this is one of those, the famous cartoon of the scientists at the blackboard, several scientists reviewing this author's work. And the blackboard has all these equations, and then it says, and then a miracle occurred, and then a whole bunch of other equations. And the other scientists are saying, I think that middle part there may still need some work. And so that's the Venezuela plan. We pick up Maduro, we put him in Brooklyn, we then run the country, and now we have more oil.
I guess so.
It has to be more complicated than that? What are you talking about? These are the basics. You figure it out. I'm turning to something else. I'm going to insult the person who actually won the Nobel Peace Prize, and then after that, I'll think of something else to distract from the Epstein files and how much beef costs these days. Oh, beef is too expensive. I think I'll take over Argentina next. How about that? Greenland, I know. We'll get Greenland. We always wanted Greenland. Now you should fear this. And Rubio said, I don't know anything about that, but I'm telling the Cubans they should fear me and what we're doing here, because I'm vice president this week, and the president's going to do what I say, and then it's J.D. Vance's turn, and then it's Stephen Miller's turn, and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah, he's already leveled.
It's Stephen Miller's turn, because I don't want to see what that means for domestic policy, but there it is.
Yeah. It means that Katie's free to go see Elon next weekend. Just throwing that out there as a possibility. But anyway.
Who's Katie? Who's Elon?
You forgotten about them? They're in the Epstein files. You'll remember when we see those. All right. Well, that's not happening either. But yeah, threats leveled against every other country in the world, more or less, and certainly the entirety of the Western Hemisphere. Trump slurring out a speech he didn't quite understand, and actually making a reference to a joke that he didn't understand, apparently, that this was now the Don Rowe doctrine. You mean that one? Yes. And that's supposed to be a joke, but I don't know. They say it's the Don Rowe doctrine.
By CBS as a joke. I wouldn't know. I don't watch them, and I certainly won't watch them now.
Well, I'll ask Barry.
How this is covered. The thing that also makes it different than Iraq 2.0 is that even the CBS Foxified media are not falling in line and saying, "Oh, this is the most wonderful thing since sliced bread." Hence that Washington Post article I quoted. I
guess this weekend it was difficult to tell via social media that they weren't doing that because everybody was sort of focusing on the few instances in which they did it. They kind of half-assed it. They definitely had some praise for it or featured the comments perhaps of Democrats who forwarded in their comments, well, Maduro was not a great guy and we're glad to be rid of him, though I didn't really think we should be doing it this way and it's totally illegal. And then reactions to that. But I suppose they haven't quite rolled out, the golden explosion graphics on CNN and been embedding people with. There's nothing to embed with. Also noted was people's observations that in the Iraq situation, 20 years ago with George Bush, the situation was that every Republican who went on the Sunday shows or gave interviews or discussed this thing had the same talking points and spoke from the same page. It was all wrong, but that was their story and they were sticking to it. And notably the opposite, that people were on Sunday shows giving interviews and more or less freelancing. Whatever I think will get me out of this interview looking okay. Are we going to invade anybody else? No. Next show, yes. Is it going to be Cuba? Yes. Is it going to be Greenland? Yes. What about when you said Cuba and Greenland? Did you mean also Mexico?
You meant Cuba?
Maybe.
No. Yes.
So
50 seconds state. We don't know. I have no idea.
Everybody just kind of gave
Is this thing on?
Yeah. They had no idea. There was no plan. It wasn't anything. And then, of course, are you going to be running it? No, we're not into the nation building thing anymore. And then Trump saying, yes, we are. We are going to run it. Yeah, well, he didn't. There was no memo to get.
We're not really running it. We don't have control over there. We're going to continue our policy as is, which is blowing up boats and interdicting oil, even though it's illegal, but we're going to continue doing it because we need to, because we have to put pressure on the people we control, because, like, if we control them, why are we doing this? We don't have an answer for that. I mean, it's just complete incoherence.
Pretty much.
Complete incoherence.
And
tactical success, which occupied the media for about 10 seconds.
They got a guy.
But unfortunately, it was a clandestine operation, like the Bin Laden one, which means no video of things blowing up, which is what networks love.
I don't know. I watched it on television. It was like watching a television show for me.
Yeah, for him. But for the rest of us, we didn't see it, and so we didn't get to see things blow up. I'm just amazed.
We should be saying Pixar didn't happen.
I'm amazed how the media is not rallying around this. It just give me some
good.
examples.
All right.
Michael Shearer in the Atlantic.
I did not realize that.
Trump threatens Venezuela's new leader with a fate worse than Maduro. The president told Atlantic that Delcy Rodriguez needs to comply with U.S. wishes or else. Guy's a thug. Right? The Washington Post headline of that piece we were reading, U.S. plan to run Venezuela clouded in confusion.
That's nice of them.
Uncertain and stubbornly complex. The Atlantic. Even close allies are asking why Trump wants to run Venezuela. Nicolás Maduro was plucked out of Caracas, but the more shocking news is what the White House plans next. Sir Wiki points out, remarkable, that Trump revoked temporary protected status for Venezuelans, saying it was safe for them to return home while the country was ruled by a guy he just used military power to remove. In other words, it wasn't that he removed Maduro and then revoked temporary protected status, because now he can go home, he's not there. First he did the temporary protected status revocation, and then he removed Maduro. And you're supposed to go home in the interim. And how the Venezuelan community accepts all of this, I don't know. I probably am going to be too honest and tell you I don't really care. I don't think exiled expat communities should run U.S. foreign policy. I don't think the Cubans in Miami should run U.S. foreign policy. I just don't think that's good policy planning.
Generally, no.
So I hope they
from the Bronx,
democracy.
However.
I hope things work out well for them, but they don't get to decide how we do things.
Unfortunately, I mean, they should.
I agree. That's why I'm screwing you all by just ignoring your purported democracy leader, because I don't really care about democracy.
Yeah. Another of the stories that you're watching today, and we haven't gotten to yet, but it's developed. Official word from out of one of the American states in the Midwest.
Let me guess, Minnesota.
That's the one. Not the Somali-run daycare story, but I don't know, maybe related to it. I don't think so, but you want to pick up the ball, and I've got official word here, or at least Kyle Griffin says he has official word here.
Right.
So.
Well, I heard this morning, this is Michael Broadcorp, I'm hearing from multiple sources that Amy Klobuchar is very likely to run for governor and will announce quickly because Tim Walz is not going to run.
There you go. That's
Democrats
it. So the word
I've
wasn't
spoken
that
with
she
are
says
thrilled
in.
about Klobuchar running as it unifies and energizes the entire DFL, that's Democratic Farmer Labor Party. That's what it's called in Minnesota.
Democrat
and before
effing
any
labor.
news was released on Walz stepping out of the race, KlobucharForGovernor.com was already registered.
Oh, well, all right.
I just thought I'd mention that.
Yeah, but it's the guy who got the Trump Kennedy Center. So
what's your official news?
The official news is that Walz, it wasn't her announcement that she was running, but his that he was not.
Well, they
Kyle
met over
Griffin
the weekend.
says it. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Did they meet in Venezuela? Then it's not news.
What the former Venezuela?
Yes, right. Acting Venezuela.
It's now Trump-Venezuela.
It might be.
It with
he could absolutely try something like that.
On a meta level, what is so weird is that all this stuff breaks over the weekend, and it's very hard to summarize it, and then we do, and it takes a half hour, and then my segment's done because I really don't have anything else. It happens all the time. Whenever the bigger the news, the shorter the segment. Probably because we do media analysis and pundit observations, and they haven't had time to sit down and write all this stuff up.
Okay, that's true. Well, there's a lot happening. Well, I'll tell you what. This is a good day for this sort of thing. There's so many things flying by that I'm then reminded of, and I couldn't cue it all in Instapaper just because I'm running out of. I would run out of space, and already I can't find things that I know are there. Media note along the way, I happened to see that say, who's Owen Jones? Let's go see who Owen Jones is. Owen Jones is lists himself as a socialist anti-fascist writer in various places, a geriatric millennial, and just for fun, GQ's 9th worst dressed man in 2016. I bet it wasn't even true. He made it up. But this part doesn't appear to be made up. BBC journalists have been banned from describing the apprehension, we'll say, of Nicolás Maduro as a kidnapping. That's what everybody was referring it to, and normal people in social media saying, yeah, pretty much a kidnapping. But the BBC news editor sent a memo around and said, well, you can use captured, you can use seized, but you have to at least avoid using kidnapped, which I guess I could see the lawyers weighing in on that one.
Well, as the break comes up, I have to give you this. This is new polling from the Washington Post. Who should decide the future leadership of Venezuela? Venezuelan people, 94%, USA, 6%. So he's got the full support of the American people on this.
Well, he's fighting with his staff, and I think the staff got a memo or wrote a memo for themselves that said, yeah, we're washing our hands of this. We just went to snatch Maduro, and now Venezuela is Venezuela on its own, which they can do, but not for Trump. Trump says, no, I'm running it now. And more on that when we get back. Lots of interesting headlines and commentary on what does it mean when Trump says he's going to run the place. Sometimes it doesn't mean anything at all. So we'll be back. He says he runs the United States. How's that going?
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio, or, on Venezuelan radio, wherever. We should see if we can get some broadcast rights down there. Interesting, a hell of a day, and an interesting phenomenon, as you were pointing out. On the one hand, so much news, but so much news that we can't even really, it's hard to even discuss it, and so maybe we just won't. So, I don't know. There's a lot to get to. I can get to it.
Have the same thing, and they're saying it 19 different ways, but it's still the same thing.
Well, that's what the abbreviated pundit roundup is supposed to do for you. Don't waste your time reading all of these if they're all the same.
Right. I have a different angle on this.
All right.
Two different angles. Versus Sam Stein, who's comparing it to Iraq. He says, more subtly, the oil will pay for the operation. Standing up a government will be pretty easy.
Oh, I see.
It's vital to take on threats around us before they harm us at home, and the people in the country will greet us as liberators. Is this 2002 or 2026?
Yeah. All right. Well, 2002. I would say, but I know what he's trying to... But with
less planning, expertise, congressional involvement, public support, and international cooperation. Yes.
Right. I mean, it was supposedly a coalition of the willing and whatnot in the first time around. But even the second time around, there was Yeah, and it's interesting that I guess it's you would expect Trump to have left that out. First of all, that's paperwork, and he's not going to do that. It's diplomacy, talking to allies, and he hates our allies. And while he's got one eye on Greenland, he keeps telling everybody how crappy an ally Denmark is. We are reminded that I guess one of the Danish diplomats reminded us in all this maltreatment of Denmark that Denmark was among the countries that lost the most armed services personnel per capita in support of our operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. They were a tremendous ally, and Trump is looking to snatch up their land. So definitely not talking to them about Venezuela ahead of time.
Adam Cochran, who is a professional dilettante. Investor,
I should be
professor,
doing
policy
that.
consultant, independent investigative journalist, father, trying to make the world suck less. That's how he describes himself.
Oh.
So he has more details on
he's a professor.
Marjorie Taylor Greene's thinking without mentioning Marjorie Taylor Green.
Oh, I mean, you can mention. I retch a little bit, but you're allowed to mention her. It's her
He didn't take
resignation
it out of her
day.
head. He's just saying this is where she's coming.
It's just because it wasn't in there to begin with.
Well, he says, it must be tough being MAGA right now because I can't think of a single major promise Trump has that he hasn't failed on or fully ignored since taking office. And he gives 20, count them, 20 examples.
Oh, all right. Well, now you have material.
No
You don't
more
wanna read them
sending
all?
U.S. troops overseas. Well, bombs Iraq, sends troops to Gaza, bombs Venezuela, threatens to put
Iran.
boots on the ground and run the place.
Yes.
Okay, number 2, America first. Bails out Argentina, brings in Venezuelan refugees, pays for Israel to get fighter jets.
Yeah.
Only deporting criminals. Well, deports neighbors and legal workers and arrests people for looking Hispanic.
Yes.
War on drugs. Pardons Honduran president who flooded U.S. with cocaine.
Yeah.
Will beat China on tech. Sells China high-end restricted chips.
Yep.
Will cut
I'm
our
just gonna
budget.
say yep.
Big beautiful bill raises spending.
More than ever, it says. That's true.
Doge will cut waste. Cut 0.02%. Prosecuted no fraud. Has to rehire more than a third of layoffs as they were essential.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad about that part.
Will lower grocery and gas prices day one. Well, they've gone up.
Oh, yeah. I imagine it's among the 20. Never mind. I'll make a note to myself. Please continue.
Will instate a Bitcoin reserve day one. Not there yet. Will end the war in Ukraine day one.
Right.
Hasn't.
Day 1,000, let's say.
Right. Will lower your taxes. Well, not if you make under $400,000.
Shoot.
Will replace Obamacare with something that works. No.
Right. And they won't replace it with anything. I mean, they just ended it like the other day.
Won't support communism. Takes government stake in private business.
Right.
No corruption. This could take the rest of the show. But son-in-law is on the board of 2 company acquisitions directly overseen by Trump. Pardons crypto
Another
exchange
note.
owner he doesn't seem to know because the guy bought Trump meme coin.
Yeah.
Will release the Epstein files. Good luck with that. It's still a
Won't.
story. Sorry, Don.
Yep.
Will investigate COVID committee. Hasn't. Will investigate January 6th committee. Hasn't.
That's all right.
Will cut drug costs by 600%.
Right.
That's all they say. Ha ha ha. Will audit the gold in Fort Knox. Hasn't.
Oh,
Will
yeah,
weed out
that's right.
corrupt officials. Excuse me, I have to take a Tums.
We'll give
Took
weed to corrupt
donations from oil
officials.
companies before going into Venezuela. Let private companies sponsor the ballroom. Expanded Palantir access to government agencies, giving him more of our data. I mean,
right.
he could go on.
Is that 20?
But if
Wow.
you are a MAGA person who actually believed what Trump was saying as opposed to what Trump is doing, and I've used this theme before,
Duh.
good luck.
Yeah. All right. So I have notes. First, I guess there was, I don't know, I'll have to scroll back and find it, but one of the things that the new viceroy of Venezuela, that's some alliterative title for Stephen Miller, was, reminded, somebody captured one of his old quotes from during the campaign, And it's relevant to one of the other items, too. You remember, of course, well, I'll lower prices on day one. And, of course, he didn't. And he tariffed everything and the prices went up and everybody was pointing back. You remember those stupid yard signs, which don't vote, that said, Kamala, high prices, Trump, low prices. And then, of course, hey, that turned out not to be true. Another one that somebody captured over the weekend, and I have, no way I'm going to take 20 minutes to scroll back to it, but it was basically Stephen Miller tweeting during the campaign, Kamala will send your children to war.
Right.
Right? Sure, right. Kamala will do it, of course. And of course, then everybody brought up the old, what's her name, headline of Donald the Dove. Hillary the Hawk.
And Hillary the Hawk from Maureen Dowd, the famous one.
I went with
because,
what's her name.
Like, when you're a pundit, you never have to apologize for being a complete idiot.
No, you don't. And that's why I'm a pundit today.
Right. Speaking of people I rarely agree with, but who can still write, that's George Will. His headline was, Trump goes monster hunting untainted by a whiff of legality. Colin Powell's Pottery Barn rule comes to mind. You want to make a comparison. I think if I remember my Gilbert and Sullivan even faintly, I think the proper terminology for Stephen Miller isn't the Viceroy. I think it's Right Honorable Lord Poobah.
All right. You know what? I couldn't fact check that one for you on the Gilbert and Sullivan. And I'm not unfamiliar.
Well, Poobah is a Gilbert and Sullivan term.
Okay, and Flintstones. That's how I know it.
Right, exactly.
The Water Buffalo Lodge. That's Poobah. I guess I figured that was theirs. What do you know? Well, Gilbert and Sullivan is rooted in, our Flintstones rooted in Gilbert and Sullivan in many ways.
So here are some things people have written besides George Will. This is also Elliot Cohen. The biggest question about Venezuela, not just the specifics, but the broader global context, what happens next. First strategic question is not what are we trying to do, or even who's our enemy, it's what else is going on. Strategists who fail to understand the context in which they operate come to grief. In this case, because Venezuela is part of a larger set of failed or failing dictatorships, and the intervention itself will cause reactions in many other countries. Context is the first thing to think about. Cuba comes to mind. China having a delegation there who is embarrassed comes to mind.
That was news to me.
A whole bunch of other things come to mind. So we'll see.
I guess so. I found there's Matthew Sheffield who found the tweet from Stephen Miller, which I got to get it's from October. October 21st, 2024. Screenshot of Kamala Harris on a TV show somewhere. Kamala will send your sons, of course, to war, all caps. Anyway, nobody's terribly shocked by the fact that Stephen Miller was projecting and every Republican accusation is a confession, but putting it on the record because it was interesting.
It's more than that. It's much more than that.
Well, then I'm glad I brought it up.
This idea that Republicans will keep you safe and at home while Democrats will send you to war was a central part of Trump's 2024 appeal to young men.
That is also true, even though they love war.
That's why he said, I don't know what the context was or the timing.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Miller's comment.
That's probably the reason that he spent time on it, was that strategy of aiming at the...
But guess who this current intervention with promises of American boots on the ground is not going to thrill?
I don't know. Who?
Young men.
Yeah. Well, the influencers are doing all they can to tell them that they should be thrilled for whatever reason. I don't know that it will work. Dye Workwear guy, you remember Derek Guy, who does all that interesting commentary on fashion and now,
he's very good at what he does.
He's also quite astute with the political things. And I was thinking, I don't know he's funny. And lots of people retweet all his best stuff, so I'll see it, but maybe I should follow him. And then I was like, well, I don't know if I want to see all the fashion. Not that I'm opposed to it, but just I thought that was the primary purpose of the feed. And I don't know. It seems he spends plenty of time on the same topics as us, and if I don't like the fashion, I can ignore it. But actually, the fashion is kind of fascinating, too. That's not my bag, so to speak, back in the, 60s or so. But he makes it interesting and fun and fascinating, so I'll sit through it. In the meantime, he says, Amazing how the entire machine can pivot within 24 hours. No need to slowly upsell the argument. Just issue new marching orders. For some people, this will work. And this is the fracture of MAGA, right? There are definitely some people for whom it won't work. But he's got a collection of before and after, basically, tweets from big names in Republican influencer circles on social media. Matt Walsh, first up, the before tweet being, we've spent the last 25 years bringing, quote, freedom and, quote, democracy. That's interesting that he has to scare, quote, freedom and democracy to countries around the globe, while our own country has been systematically invaded. And now our largest cities are run by foreigners and communists. If you want to know why I'm so avowedly non-interventionist, this is why. What's his after tweet? Quote, this is a war for oil, 5 exclamation points, unquote. He's making fun of the people crying about that. First of all, he says the, quote, war lasted like 90 minutes. Second, going to war to secure vital resources for your own people is totally illegitimate. Why should we allow some third world communist shithole to control trillions of dollars worth of oil? Wow, that is a bit of a reversal. There's Laura Loomer. I'm America first. I don't support regime change. I went on Bannon's War Room to talk about Chinese aggression in Venezuela and why we need to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a foreign Islamic terrorist organization. So I don't support regime change until there was a regime change, after which she said, Maduro has arrived at the DEA office in Manhattan. He was transported in an armored motorcade after being transported in a blindfold via helicopter and then by plane to New York after his compound in Caracas was raided by U.S. Special Forces. Proud to be an American today. USA, America flag, emoji. There's more.
Well, Donald the Dove,
yeah.
Hillary the Hawk.
Cat Turd has reversed himself. Oh, no. And the fourth one was Will Chamberlain, but all basically the same. Basically saying,
basketball player?
Yes, right. He's tremendous.
Or the actor, Richard Chamberlain.
I don't know. Yeah, no, not that. A totally different Chamberlain of whom we've probably never heard of the guy, but MAGA influencer type. It is amazing, as I say, turned on a dime, that when MAGA, before the invasion, was selling itself to, well, like you said, to the young men who made up the core of the place. We are non-interventionists. We're no more of this international adventurism with the military and nation building, etc.
Upton Sinclair 100 years ago. It's difficult to understand something when you're paid to not understand it.
Right. And there's nothing to understand here. They don't understand what they're doing. They're just, you said I should say this is great, so I will. I don't know if I understand it. I just wanted to cash the check.
Well, I had to check first because I'm paid directly by Russia, but I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say.
Right. I don't know. This whole thing, yeah. So it's pretty amazing. I thought that was one of the more interesting twists of the whole thing, the people who pivoted. Among the people who did not pivot, was I mentioned before, today is the day that Marjorie Taylor Green, as Trump calls her, not me, although
you call her
the name fits. Yeah, I call her Murdery Taylor Green.
Because you called her that first.
Yes. Oh, I'm sure that he got it from me only because everybody on social media, every time I say something they don't like, they say, you're helping the Republicans. They're not reading me. I'm not helping anybody. Don't worry about it. I'm not even helping the people who are reading what I'm saying. Right. But yeah, anyway,
wait a minute.
Murdery Taylor Green.
You're treating your commenters the way I'm treating the Venezuelan exile community in Florida. You're welcome and entitled to your opinion, and it's important, and you have insights we don't, and it shouldn't really affect how I do policy. It
won't. And so Marjorie Taylor Green, her resignation becomes effective today. And she's of the faction, if it is a faction, maybe it's just her at this point. We don't know. We'll have to wait and measure and see.
Very popular in her own district.
Yeah, so I guess she's returning there and will be campaigning on the approach to this. Where's did I put this thing away? Here we go. I gotta open it up in the actual browser first. Greg Sargent, though, who I guess, like most of us, taking a short break over the black hole weeks, the idea that Trump MAGA, Trump-MAGA, are, quote, anti-interventionist is based on a confused reading of their hatred of multilateralism and international law and institutions, which I thought was a good point.
Yes.
And then he later speaks with Marjorie Taylor Green.
I don't like it when we have to ask Europe for permission. I just want to do it myself without asking anybody. That's his foreign policy.
That's right. And so I thought that was a very interesting, a good fine point, a good nuance, right? It's not that they're anti-interventionist. It's that normally when a responsible president, Democrat or Republican, I mean, if you can find one, does one of these invasions, they do all the diplomatic back channel work to make sure.
I don't want to ask nobody nothing. I don't want to ask Europe. I don't want to ask Congress.
Yeah.
I'm only going to ask the oil companies.
And we're like the internationalist part.
They're the only ones who got a heads up.
Yes, that's true too. We should mention that, at least according to his babbling, his uncontrolled babbling on Air Force One. The usual source of the chaos for the weekend is the flight back and forth where he blurts out, the quiet parts, in which he said, members of Congress spent the weekend saying, he didn't tell me, and I'm one of the gang of 8, or I haven't heard anything. But Trump insists, I told the oil companies ahead of time because we needed to consult with them because we needed their agreement to come in and run the place. And they've agreed to do it, except that 1, no one knows whether he really told them anything. 2, if he did tell them something, that's actually a huge, terrible violation of everything. And then 3, the oil companies have since said, we didn't agree to do anything yet. It might be a great idea, but we didn't talk. And if we did, we didn't say yes. So
we can't
no thanks.
just come up with $100 billion tomorrow and say, yes, we're in.
Right.
We don't even know who's running the place.
And that leads us to another interesting point, which is, and I think that's part of what Marjorie Taylor Green was telling Greg Sargent about. I don't know whether they spoke directly or he was just gleaning it from some other interview, but the international corruption angle of this, which really allegedly really upsets her, it may be that, Trump may be fudging the number. Saying the oil companies are going to invest $100 billion in. I don't know. That sounded like a big number, so he said it. They may be willing to invest something, but not necessarily that. But also, it may be that, I didn't mean they're going to invest it in building oil drilling and refining infrastructure in Venezuela. I meant they're going to put it in my ballroom, and then I'm going to let them be the ones that exploit Venezuela. If you want to have a lease in Venezuela, or you want to be able to seize the oil or buy at auction the oil that we seize from rogue tankers or whatever it is, you need to put $100 billion into my ballroom fund. And then you can, that's the pay to play. And that may be what they're talking about more than investing in infrastructure down there. We don't know, and we may never find out. Let me see if I can find, though, the second Greg Sargent thing. That, too, I'm pretty sure I parked.
While you do that,
it ain't here.
I'm going to sign myself off.
Okay.
You're doing great. And I
need to drink more tea. Okay. You got pressing engagements.
We'll try to line up stuff for Wednesday, and hopefully people will get down to it and start writing so we can talk about some of this stuff. But
I have plenty of written material. Yeah, well, we're really near the 10 o'clock hour as it is. So well done considering how much we crammed in, I think, on that one. I'll look for Greg Sargent's thing, and we will see you on Wednesday, unless we invade Connecticut next, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's on the list.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate the help, and we'll limp along for the rest of the time here. Here we go. Greg Sargent. Okay, well, I'll pitch in, and if you make a silent exit, that is A-okay. If you hang out and listen, that is A-okay too. So let's see. Trump, it is said, it's a quote, I guess, from, the quote is not from Marjorie Taylor Green, but I guess it's about Marjorie Taylor Green. Shall we start from the beginning? Greg Sargent is discussing his own earlier comments or his earlier post which reads, now that Trump is trying to hand Venezuela to U.S. oil companies, that incentivizes execs to give big donations to his PAC and White House ballroom. There it is. In a vicious circle of corruption, Norm Eisen says. And then it goes on to say that MTG, as they call her for short, gets how this betrays MAGA. On the podcast, like you could just call it a podcast. You don't have to be, the hip terminology is pod. On the pod, Norm lays it all out. I haven't had a chance to listen to the pod, and I can't just steal the pod and put it on our pod, but you should be aware of it, and maybe you want to head over there. It's at newrepublic.com and listen. And there's a link to it, and let me open it up so that I can see if there's any quotes from Marjorie Taylor Green. The headline here is, Marjorie Taylor Green wrecks Trump in epic Maduro rant as MAGA breaks. But I guess you probably have to listen to the pod to hear the quote, because I don't recall that there was much of it in this teaser piece. But it's a teaser. So, Marjorie Taylor Green wrecks Trump in epic Maduro rant as MAGA breaks. I am very wary always of headlines of, wrecking this an epic rant, because then I go and I listen to it and they're like, I am in stark disagreement with this person. I wish we could find an alternative way of doing that thing. Like, wow, they really wrecked that person. What an epic rant. You need clicks. Anyway, the headline or the subheader in Greg Sargent's write-up of the podcast summary, I guess a little bit like what Scott does. As Representative Green harshly criticizes Trump's invasion of Venezuela, prominent advocate Norm Eisen explains how this illegal war unmasks MAGA's true intentions. Oh, really? And details what should happen in response. I don't know if there's any unmasking to be done of MAGA's true intentions. MAGA's true intentions is Donald Trump intends to use it to do whatever he wants to do and hopes to be able to steer people into blindly following him wherever he goes. Sometimes it works, as in most everything, or arresting all your neighbors. Sometimes it doesn't work, as in telling people that they should get vaccinated against COVID. But the write-up here is, after American forces captured Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro, he says captured, like the BBC does, and brought him to the United States, almost no Republicans spoke out in dissent, but Representative Marjorie Taylor Green did speak out. Now, again, you don't have to hand it to her, and if you wanted to hand it to her, she's not going to be here in Washington, D.C. for you to do it. She's gone. She left. If you hand it to her, you're going to have to ship it to her at her address in Georgia. But if you do try to hand it to her, I would like to try to intercept it and give it to me instead of to her. Why not? Because I don't know. I don't deserve any particular credit, certainly not on the Venezuela front, but I'd rather have it than let her have it. So there's really, all I'm trying to say is, under no circumstances do you really have to hand it to Marjorie Taylor Green. And he's not saying that. He is only saying most Republicans didn't speak out in dissent, but she did. But so what? In an extended rant, which, wow, she really put herself out there, huh? With an extended rant. She accused Trump of breaking his promise to avoid military adventurism and not even bothering with the other, I guess maybe it was one of the 20 things that Adam Cochran came up with. But that's one of the notes I made to myself while Greg was reading us Adam Cochran's list. So, she accused Trump of breaking his promise to avoid military adventurism. Oh my God, he breaks promises? No way. She sharply questioned Trump's commitment to fighting, quote, narco-terrorists. Duh, he's releasing them from prison. And she even said straight out that this is a naked bid to take Venezuela's oil. But now she's just a libtard. Come on. Anyway, and she even said straight out that this is a naked bid to take Venezuela's oil. I just wanted to repeat that. I didn't really want to, but they said I could say that once or twice, either way. All right. there you have it. I don't know. Maybe I was just attracted to naked, and that was what did it. The eye goes there. All right, where were we with this one? With other MAGA figures questioning Trump's interventionism. Are there? Okay, then why aren't we handing it to them? All this wrecks any sense that Trump's version of MAGA stands for anything. Well, no, it never did. You knew that. It stands for Trump doing Trump things. Trump letting Trump be Trump. Anyway, MAGA doesn't stand for anything. We talked to Norm Eisen, I didn't, Greg did, the publisher of The Contrarian and co-founder of the Democracy Defenders Fund, who has been talking about the invasion as an example of international corruption, just as Green has. He explains how Green laid bare MAGA's corrupt core, why Trump's illegal invasion is so damaging to international law, and what can be done to try to bring some accountability. Listen to the episode there. It says here, but I mean there. And he's got a transcript if you prefer it that way. So you'll find it over at the New Republic. It's not hard to find, newrepublic.com. Not hard to find Greg Sargent because they want to feature him, because he does a really good job with all this stuff. One, I guess, thing that he pulls out of the pod and offers to us as a comment on Blue Sky, Trump is setting up a payback loop with the big oil companies. Those companies and or their executives can start contributing to Trump's vanity projects like the Ballroom, like the Kennedy Center. Norm Eisen, Greg tells us, is good on the pod, explaining how the Venezuela invasion opens new avenues for corruption. And I think you probably inherently understood that that was the case. But if you're looking for somebody to explicitly make the case, well, I guess it's Norm Eisen. But he does it on Greg Sargent's podcast. And they talk about Marjorie Taylor Green. And that's how it all comes together. So, yeah, I think that was it for the notes that I made for myself while we were reading the list of broken promises. And I'm sure it's a longer list. If we really sit down and think about it, we can probably come up with another 20. Because I guess really what it's all about at its heart, MAGA, is about breaking promises. The reason Trump makes promises is to get people to look away from his plot to do the things he promises not to do. Just as every Republican accusation is a confession. Basically, every promise from Trump to do something is a way of making you look in the other direction so that he can do that evil, nasty thing and exploit it. All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's invade Venezuela, if you will. In the second half of the show, let me scroll through some of the things I set aside, some of the various things that I thought were interesting enough to repost, if not retweet, per se, from others that are of interest, I think, to our discussion. This I thought a good observation too, although it stands in contrast to Greg's conclusion, and perhaps with more time passing, we got a more nuanced look at this. Or I think what Greg was saying, our Greg, Greg Sargent is our Greg too, but not nearly as much. And not nearly as often. Maybe never. But the conclusion here is maybe with the passage of some more time, I mean, not a whole lot. It's only been a weekend. I guess the lack of a sustained interest in messaging the Venezuela invasion as all good and all American in every aspect. There's been some mixed messaging from the media. And so maybe in the early going, the networks were not saying what a terrible thing this is and how illegal and awful it all is. They were kind of saying, America is involving itself in a military action. Our role for the media is to cheer for such things. I guess that was an easy conclusion to reach in the very, very early going. And in this case, it happens to be, well, who are we looking at here? Is this somebody that I know? Well, not offhand, but what is this? How will we say this? E.E. Houls, Houls. Screen name here, the residual haunting of Erin. So I guess one of the E's is from Erin, and maybe her last name begins with or her middle initial is E as well. And I'm guessing that this is her is a nickname for herself. But anyway, she points out everyone on the TV wants you to know that this is good, actually. Now, this is something from, January 3rd. So that would be Saturday at, it looks like 6:45 p.m. So at that point, it may be the case that most of the mainstream traditional media were at least not being overly critical, let's say, or even critical at all of the action. And that is, I think, everybody's general impression. It may be that by the end of the day, Sunday, there was more nuance available and more reporting available and more openness to the to including the opposition to the operation and framing it as illegal than we got, or than what might have been allowed in the Iraq days. I'm guessing that's what this is about. Anyway, we also then have the comment of Chatham Harrison, who posts on a reflection of Erin's comments. This, I thought, was the interesting part of all this. While everyone was cheering for the Venezuela action under Trump, compare this to Biden leaving Afghanistan and think about what the incentives are for every American politician. I thought that was an interesting point, right? Trump, by the way, campaigns on Donald the Dove, Hillary the Hawk, or at least is accepting of that framing, and campaigns on Trump for peace, Trump's for non-interventionism, Trump's against the nation building and the constant, endless, what do they call them? Forever wars. But Kamala will send your sons to die in war, and Kamala will be, and Biden was, and then Biden completes, or actually effectuates, the end of the occupation in Afghanistan, which Trump campaigns in 2016 on doing, but never actually gets around to implementing it. Joe Biden does it. So in addition to every Republican accusation is a confession, every Republican promise has to, if it's going to be fulfilled, it's going to have to be fulfilled by Democrats later on in the cleanup operation. But yes, compare this to Biden leaving Afghanistan and think about what the incentives are for every American politician. If you start one of these things, the instant reaction from all the networks and things like networks is, hooray, USA America. Even if it's a totally illegal and a totally illegal operation that's been discussed with none of our allies and is in fact meant to threaten some, if not all, of our allies, still cheering it because America, troops. Whereas, okay, 20 years of occupation in Afghanistan, you could say bipartisan support for bringing the troops home. Trump campaigned on it. Biden certainly thought it was well worth implementing. Biden does implement it. Press goes crazy. How dare you? This is terrible. Blah, blah, blah. Interesting observation. So what are politicians going to do? They're at least going to note in the back of their mind, even if they're actually honest people who want to do a good job, they're going to say, well, if I'm honest about what I want to do and what I think is in the best interest of the United States and do it, I will be savaged if that is, if that turns out to be withdrawing from forever wars and forever occupations and bringing troops home and ending those sorts of nation-building follies like the Republicans said they wanted to do. Democrats do it. Won't we now have bipartisan support for it? Oh, no, it was a trap. For you, it was a trap. Whereas starting a new crazy-ass war, hooray, things are exploding and CNN is there. That's a good story. We like it. I thought that was a good and interesting observation. Let's see. Matt Ortega, who, by the way, first of all, I think you all know Matt Ortega from Netroots, as a Netroots denizen and fellow traveler on social media. I don't think I mentioned at the time, and I guess we should probably get around to it, now a candidate for Congress. Did you know that? How exciting is it? Well, it's a little more exciting if you are in California's 14th district where he's running. And of course, there'll be a primary involved. It may be a very crowded primary, but how exciting is it that it involves somebody that we actually kind of know from online? But Matt Ortega, I guess everything is kind of campaign oriented now. So one of the interesting comments that you can get from a Democratic candidate for office, federal office, on this is, can we finally dispense with, Marco Rubio joke, can we finally dispense with the notion that MAGA is anti-war? Certainly the elites are not, and they dictate the direction of the party line. The people they convinced with their lies are not setting the agenda. And by way of illustration here, he grabs the Blue Sky posting of Black Cloud 6, who says, want to see what MAGA is thinking right now? Screen grab from Twitter. Michael Knowles says, if I were, I don't know who Michael Knowles is, but I guess he's got a check mark, but so does everybody. If I were Canada, I'd be on my best behavior right about now. Threatening Canada in the aftermath. Canada, I don't think has been on the list of late, meaning over the weekend, but it could get there. Given that Mexico, we had Trump saying, I think we should be doing something in Mexico. Sounds good to me. He's threatened Colombia, Mexico, Cuba, and Greenland, I think, over the weekend, plus more possible bombing in Iran. He's forgotten, I think, about Nigeria for the moment. All right, let's see. I thought this was a nice encapsulation of it. Leon, who is actually under the address on Blue Sky of Leon, L-E-W, like Leon, Y-A-W-N, Leon, I guess. Anyway, she, I don't know, can't really tell, cartoon emoji, says, this is your mission. Our pedophile president needs you to jump out of a helicopter to kidnap the head of a state and his wife so some oil CEOs can make a lot of money. We'll be watching from a resort in Florida that still serves wedge salad. That was a good commentary. Good dig on Mar-a-Lago. And checking how many retweets we get. Good luck, soldier. Why does he say it that way? The answer lies buried in some of the other stories we have in Instapaper, I believe, and some other Blue Sky posts and reposts, and we'll see if I can grab which one, where we have to go to grab it. I don't know. Probably actually still back on Blue Sky. So the part where he says, well, we'll be watching from a resort in Florida. Of course, he ran the whole thing, to the extent that he ran it at all, Trump, from Pervalago. And one of the more interesting things, what was it? I can't remember. Blogging of the presidency. It was a BOP News. You remember those guys? I don't know if they're still in operation. They probably ought to be, but kind of they had a sort of a specialty in analysis of the visuals coming out of the White House and campaigns and stuff. And this one would have been right up their alley. So Trump is installed at Pervalago for the holidays when this operation, probably the whole thing is planned and launched, to the extent it was planned at all. And he never considers going back to Washington to be, in the seat of government, close to the Pentagon, in the secure situation room, so that he can monitor events. And by the way, I guess one tangent I'll do here was, at some point, Trump in one of the interviews following the announcement of the action, describes how he watched I watched the whole thing like it was a television program. Honestly, it was like watching television. And of course, everybody laughed and rolled their eyes. And to be fair, if that's still a thing you can be, all U.S. policy, foreign and domestic, is like watching television for Donald Trump. But it's just particularly galling when you do it with respect to, military action where people are dying. To refer to it as a television show is particularly galling and insulting. But a lot of the analysis after the fact appears to be, based on the visuals that come out of this thing, that Trump is really looking, somebody else says, Trump did this the way he did it and did it at all because he was looking for his own 0 dark 30 moment. He really, really, in addition to really, really coveting the Nobel Peace Prize, so much so that he, changed the direction of the fate of Venezuela's leadership entirely and stood it on its head. The whole world just watched, wisely or not, the whole world just watched the Nobel Prize. Gosh, there's so much happening, and it's happening all right now, and I'm being distracted by opening things so I can tell you about it later. I know, I got to find my track back to where I was going here. But the whole world watched the Nobel Prize awarded to, what was her name, Machado? Gosh, I've already forgotten her name. But we discussed, and I'm glad we did, spend a little bit of time on the weird, nature of it and the controversy surrounding it. Like, this is somebody who just won the Nobel Peace Prize, and immediately commented that Trump's bombing of Venezuelan boats in the Caribbean was a great idea. And she was totally in support of it because we gotta strike back against the narco-terrorists at the heart of the Maduro regime. Anyway, that was all very questionable, but the world saw the Nobel Peace Prize being awarded to the opposition leader, we were told, in Venezuela, and then regime change, decapitation, strike, grabbing Nicolás Maduro, who has, installed himself essentially as the dictator in Venezuela, according to the American telling of things, and then removed, and then they just don't facilitate the Nobel Peace Prize winning opposition leader's takeover of the country. Now, I don't know if she's in country right now, because remember, she was smuggled out in order to accept her Nobel Prize, and then might have found it wise not to go back, but I'm not sure. But I mean, the United States facilitates this sort of thing all the time when they topple some regime, and when there's a preferred candidate to lead the country and they are living in exile, we bring them back and then say, look, voila, look who's back. It's the Shah of Venezuela, everybody. Terrific. Whatever it is. And you know the story. He passed on the opportunity, and amazingly, there were people who were willing to tell the newspapers, tell the Washington Post, it's because he's jealous of her getting the Nobel Peace Prize. That is bizarre all by itself. But then, in addition to all of this, watching this happen on TV, not going back to Washington, D.C. to watch it on TV, but in addition saying, I've got to have my 0 dark 30 moment. I've got to have Obama. I'm insanely jealous. This is how we did it, right? She was insanely jealous of the Nobel Peace Prize, but he was also insanely jealous of Obama having the ability to show pictures of himself supervising the raid to kill bin Laden. Donald Trump, I think, always imagined himself in that role. But, well, no. I don't think he always imagined himself in that role. Donald Trump saw that role and then began imagining himself in that role instead. He didn't ever have the foresight to say that we should be doing this and that we should be striking against bin Laden. Even after bin Laden, carried out 9/11, he basically didn't have the mental wherewithal to say, I'm for taking that guy out. I'm sure he must have said at some point, I hate that guy, they should kill him. But he didn't plan any operation. Even, when he knew he was running for president, he didn't plan an operation. If I win, I'm going to do this thing. But then it was done for him. And anyway, he's super jealous of all of that. And he wanted to have the same moment. So I think that's what we see in the visuals from out of Pervalago. They watched, they set up the whole thing on screens, but they circulated these pictures of him sitting in a dark room somewhere watching all these monitors, and that's supposed to pass for, this is how I remember the Obama pictures looking. So how are we going to do that? Well, we don't have the Situation Room here. You should. It's Pervalago. He spends every other minute down there. Why don't they have a Situation Room? Why haven't they built one? Well, I don't want it to look, it's a beautiful club and resort. I don't want to mess it up with construction. I'm going to tear the east wing of the White House down, but I don't want to damage Pervalago with construction. Can't have that. There's paying customers here. It's that interesting that he's willing to tear down part of the White House, but not Pervalago. So anyway, I got to watch some things on TV screens. Set me up a thing. And I think he basically gave some instructions. I need something that's going to look like a secure Situation Room so that photos can be taken of me sitting resolutely, flanked by my aides, watching this operation happen. On television, the best place you can have it. So they set it up. But the photos reveal that it was essentially, right, it was a Hollywood set kind of thing, except the Hollywood set would have been done better and correctly. It becomes obvious from the various photos. They have just taken, or somebody says, well, look, this is a fake Situation Room. They never set one up at Pervalago, which is astonishing to begin with. But then again, the whole operation in Pervalago was always kind of like, let's become the targets of espionage. As long as you pay me the $200,000 a year to be a member of the club, you can steal the secrets. It's okay. Probably should up the figure at this point. But anyway, so they don't have a SCIF, right? Secure compartmentalized information facility or something. Anyway, they don't have one. So they said, make one. Make something that looks like one. And somebody says, so they dragged out the pipe and draping, and they put this black cloth up and enclose an area to look like a darkened underground bunker, but it's really just black fabric hanging from what they, the piping, as they say, is, putting up a framework to like a room divider and draping it in black. And then somebody says, actually, on second thought, they didn't even do that. They half-assed it. They didn't even have the piping. There's some exposed rafters in the room that they were using, which may have been, for all I know, the ballroom, just one corner of the ballroom. And they just draped this stuff from the rafters. They don't actually even have the piping, which is amazing for an event venue. Like an event venue like the ballroom at Mar-a-Lago should have that piping and draping available and used all the time. But it was probably set up for a paying customer somewhere. So instead they pulled out the black stuff, which I guess I will say this. I'm kind of interested in the fact that they have enough black draping for Trump's funeral, just for no particular reason. They already have it on hand. But instead they put it to use for faking up a Situation Room. And then he watches it on television in there. Like they said, I'm going to be watching from a resort in Florida that still serves wedge salad. Wink, wink. He's an oldie. And an old Floridian at that. So I thought that one was kind of interesting. And there was a lot to be gleaned from looking at those photos. Then, of course, the other question of whether we're going to be running Venezuela or not. We don't know. and who's going to do it, and how are they going to do it. And that was the article that I think we should probably read all the way through because there was just so much to it. But interesting idea that now it's going to fall to Stephen Miller, who no doubt thinks that running, whatever that means, Venezuela, just essentially means it's remote work, essentially, for him. And how interesting that everybody else has to return to the office, by the way, only to be riffed by a teenager, as it happens, thanks to Dodgy. But for Stephen Miller, remote work will be okay. Why? Because I'm not really going to run Venezuela. We're going to take from Venezuela whatever it is we think we want from them, but that's the extent of our running of Venezuela. So, all right, well, let's see. Why is it not immediately obvious where the Washington Post article is? Although maybe I may have put aside like somebody's Blue Sky post that links to the story, but maybe not. Well, I should probably check Greg's list because he probably put it up there, the Washington Post story that we were all talking about. U.S. plan to, quote, run Venezuela clouded in confusion. And let's close out this segment by reading through as much of this as we can. In Washington and Caracas, the vision for administering Venezuela in the weeks and months ahead appears uncertain and stubbornly complex. Yes. Adam Taylor, Samantha Schmidt, Natalie Allison, and Karen DeYoung are the authors. The Trump administration's bold operation to capture strongman Nicolás Maduro, I'm sure Trump is upset that he was called a strongman, from his home in Venezuela was a startling tactical success. Can't argue that it was a tactical success. They got him. But as the smoke clears in Caracas a day after President Donald Trump said triumphantly that the United States would now, quote, run Venezuela, the reality of how Washington will administer that country in the weeks and months ahead appears uncertain and stubbornly complex. Yes, it will. And by the way, it probably also brings to mind, interestingly, I guess as we await Congress returning to Washington to figure out what the hell's going on here and what to do about it. And, among those who will return, of course, the members of the United States Senate, where we all know the filibuster is a big issue. Just remember, I guess, that the original definition, the original use of the word filibuster was the Spanish word used in Latin America of the referring to the filibustero. The filibustero, I guess the translation that Wikipedia provides for it is lawless plunderer. And I think we've discussed this in the past. When I took a trip down to Costa Rica, this was highlighted, and I mentioned it in I think at least in passing on my way back, that it's refers to this rather astonishing, in hindsight, I guess, practice from, here's the Wikipedia description of it. The modern English form filibuster was borrowed from the early 1850s from the Spanish filibustero, lawless plunderer. The term was applied to adventurers, as they say. Adventurers like William Walker. I'm pretty sure we at some point said, go read the William Walker Wikipedia entry. William Walker, who were engaging in private military expeditions in Latin America. Over the course of the mid to late 19th century, the term filibustering became common in American English in the sense of obstructing progress in a legislative assembly. But the old use of it from the William Walker era was essentially of the United States just looking the other way at a minimum on private armies being raised and just saying, let's see if we can seize land in Latin America or the Caribbean and establish some place where slavery will be legal. Which may or may not be the aim of what's going on now, but essentially it was, the laws in the United States are not really working to our advantage. What if we got some guns and grabbed some territory somewhere and said, here in this place, the laws will work to our advantage. That was the idea. And that may be all that's going on in all of this. But anyway, our next break is on its way. We were just at the beginning of the Washington Post story. We really do have to kind of get some of that out and on the record. We'll read another paragraph before we go. Maduro's allies in Caracas are still in power. That is well worth noting, of course. And we'll get to some of the nuance of that. Some defiantly haranguing about U.S. imperialism. The democratically elected opposition leaders are effectively exiled, bluntly sidelined by the Trump administration. And Washington continues to hint at more military action, not only against Venezuela, but other perceived enemies in the region, such as Cuba and Colombia. And here he is scratching his head and angry that he didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize and all of this. It's all quite bizarre, of course. We'll be right back.
Hi, everybody. It's me, David, still your host for the Kagro in the Morning Show after all these years. Thank you for all your continuing support for the show. And if you're listening regularly and still thinking about getting on board as a supporter, well, the time is now. Patreon.com is the easiest way to make recurring subscription-style payments every month, all year round, to keep us going. patreon.com/KagroX brings you to our page where you can sign up with your monthly support. And hey, have you seen our clever new subscription tiers? It's easier than ever to sign up for, say, one crisp dollar bill for every information-packed 2-hour show. If you're the plan ahead type, there's even a year-long subscription program that saves you 15% on the cover price. Or it would if there was a cover price, or even a cover, for that matter. patreon.com/KAGROX. Thanks again for all your support.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Kagro in the Morning Show. And gosh, so much still happening, and me opening more and more tabs on things I now am hoping to try to add to the mix in the show. And I don't know whether it's really going to happen. I might just end up having to give you a bunch of links to. Here's some other interesting things that we should probably talk about, and maybe you can remind me later on. All right, let's go back to what the Washington Post had to say here in what was one of the most circulated articles over the weekend explaining events with respect to Venezuela. So, Maduro's allies in Caracas, still in power, right? Some defiantly haranguing about U.S. imperialism. The democratically elected opposition leaders are effectively exiled, bluntly sidelined by the Trump administration. Also, by the way, the non-elected opposition leaders, but who won the Nobel Prize for their opposition for whatever reason, also bluntly sidelined by the Trump administration. And Washington continues to hint at more military action, not only against Venezuela, but other perceived enemies in the region, such as Cuba and Colombia. And the tabs I find myself opening have to do with threats toward Greenland now. And I guess, I don't know what started it, but now the Danish are commenting on all of this. Look, none of this makes any sense and is very troubling. And we're worried now, too. And that's a very, very bad thing in general. Now, let's see. The other thing that I was reminded of here, all right, well, the democratically elected opposition leaders. Oh, yes, there was somewhere along the line one of the other comments that others made that I reposted and thought were worthy observations. Where was this one? About basically somebody, I guess we'll say like respected suit and tie analyst, international analyst type person with whom we might not necessarily always agree, but basically evaluating the weekend's events and saying, there was a way if Trump were another president, a different United States president could have pulled off this very same operation. And all it really would have taken to more or less unite, important aspects of the world community, the American community, maybe even the Venezuelan community, would have been to say, listen, Maduro is a terrible guy. He rules as an autocrat. Yes, lots of people point the fingers at the United States for hypocrisy, etc. It's true. We acknowledge it. I understand that everybody thinks that, but we're removing this guy. The world community believes, the international community believes, Maduro lost the last election and has been holding on to power illegitimately. It's odd and uncomfortable for me as Donald Trump to be saying this or accusing others of it, because every Republican accusation is a confession. But leave that aside. Everyone does, I think, except for Maduro, think that about Maduro. And we're removing him, and there are democratically elected leaders that we could facilitate the installation of. But, we're going to take a hands-off approach to the actual decision of who will lead the country, and hopefully foster maybe some more free elections, or if the mechanism exists, installation of the democratically elected leaders of Venezuela instead, or even this Nobel Prize winner. And then we're getting the hell out of Dodge. They could have done that. If they had said this was in support of the international consensus on who actually won the last election in Venezuela, they could have made it about that. They could have done it that way. And they chose not to even bother. Right? So, that's of some importance in all of this. By the way, also of some importance, and this means I'm never going to get through this Washington Post article, but in scrolling and looking for that, I also noticed some other commentary about the fake situation room that they put together for themselves. One of the more revealing things, in addition to a few shots in which the black curtains are accidentally left parted and opened, and then you can peek through and you see, oh yeah, this is just some corner of some room in Pervalago that they dressed up to look like a situation room, draped in black. But the gold-backed banquet chairs from the ballroom are what they're using to sit in there. They don't even have like an actual conference room table and chairs set that they can use to make it look like something official. But in addition, what really caught everyone's eye is that they have those big screens up where you would have expected to be seeing, that weird grainy military style night vision video with a targeting mechanism in the middle and explosions happening. And instead, what's up on those screens is Twitter feeds. And everybody's driving themselves crazy trying to magnify in the pictures to see what hashtag are they following, what search terms are they following on there, because the feed is almost exclusively a bunch of mega influencers, having a great time following events and rah-rahing about a U.S. military adventure. And let's see, somebody grabs this picture and says several of the photos have Twitter up on the screen in the background, but I can't make out what the search term is. That is the post of Paleo Future, Matt Novak, noting all of this. I guess I don't know what the relationship is between this and his screen name, Paleo Future, but no one knows the relationship between my name and my stupid screen name. But okay, a reporter from Gizmodo, Matt Novak, in case you thought the name sounded familiar, and Jamel Bowie commenting on his comment and making a very good point that a few people made in different ways, that at least part of everything this government does is to impress a handful of psychos on Twitter. That really is, I thought, a great observation. Don Moynihan making a similar observation, playing off of Will Stancil making a similar observation. The way it's so interesting the way the different people put it here. Here, the root prompt here being Jacob Bogage, Bogage, I don't know. Jacob, White House and Econ Policy at the Washington Post, who says they've got Twitter up on the big screens in Trump's Mar-a-Lago makeshift, quote, situation room. Photos here are from Trump's Truth Social account. It is rather ridiculous. And let's see, it's Don Moynihan saying, I'm trying to figure out the right term for the idea that governing decisions are disproportionately shaped by perceptions based from online bubbles or aim to please an imagined online audience. What would be a good term for this? I'm going to be still open to suggestions. Poster brain, podcast brain, what else? He also includes, I guess, as the original impetus for his comment here from Will Stansel, a couple of screen grabs in which Will says the Trump people, they genuinely cannot distinguish between this sounds based and gets us a lot of retweets from our neo-Nazi fan base and this is in reality a good idea. Can't distinguish. They are pursuing lunatic authoritarian policies because the reward centers in their brains are tuned to social media likes and nothing else. That's actually quite astute, I think. He's talking in this thread with Fane Greenwood, another online favorite follow. This administration is profoundly and absolutely detached from reality in a directly internet and slop-enabled way that I do think is genuinely unique in history. Yes, they are entirely attuned to largely bot and LLM-driven social media engagement and to literally nothing else. I mean, just sort of thinking about the danger this represents, right? Trump does this operation, and instead, in addition to watching it happen on television, he's watching social media feeds and following hashtags and following influencers who are telling him what a great thing this is. And some of them are not real people. And some of them are bot farm from Russia people. And they're just, does Russia want this to happen? There was some interesting commentary also in the early hours of this. Well, Venezuela is a Russian client state. But that only made people think immediately, he probably called Vladimir Putin and asked, can I do this? And, without you getting in the way. And he kind of got the permission. And then that sort of emerged as people, analysts are saying it may very well be, and Trump has kind of hinted at this in the past, that this is just one of those old school spheres of influence things. Russia, you can do whatever you want in Ukraine. China, I guess you can do whatever you want with, say, Taiwan. And in exchange, we get to do whatever we want with the Don Road Doctrine. It's our hemisphere, I think he said in the same breath. It's our hemisphere. We'll do what we want. It's just that astonishing. Anyway, the Washington Post story. Right? Trump already continuing to hint at more military action in the area because the Don Road Doctrine. Cuba's state news agency reported late Sunday that 32 Cuban security personnel were killed in direct combat with U.S. forces who seized Maduro. Yikes. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, a longtime hawk on Venezuela and now publicly the face of the Trump administration's policy there, even though he said I'm not, bristled when asked repeatedly on Sunday to explain how the U.S. would ensure control of Venezuela without resorting to the sort of invasion and nation building that led to quagmires in Iraq and Afghanistan. What we are running is the direction that this is going to moving forward, Rubio told ABC News This Week with George Stephanopoulos, adding that the U.S. would continue to apply pressure through restrictions on Venezuela's oil trade. And as another commenter said that I also, reposted, and we'll try to find it for you and include it in a roundup, saying, again, Trump and Rubio and the others are running Venezuela only in the sense of how they run the United States, which is to say that they don't run anything. That's just a place that Trump considers it within his prerogative to grab stuff from. Whatever he wants to take, he can take, whether it's now here or in Venezuela. So the aim, Rubio said, would be to stop Venezuela from doing things that run contrary to U.S. interests. In other words, we'll pretend it's a state. Whatever we wish was happening here in the United States or in Venezuela, we're just going to say that has to happen, or else we'll bomb you again. Do the drugs stop coming? Are the changes made? Is Iran expelled? Does the migration pattern stop? Rubio said. Speaking on Air Force One on Sunday evening, Trump offered a different view. There's no talking points here. What we want to do is fix up the oil, fix up the country, bring the country back, and then have elections. They had elections, but no. Trump told reporters as he returned to Washington from Florida. The president also said that military action in Colombia sounded good to him and that he thought Cuba was, quote, ready to fall without U.S. intervention, which is funny because Rubio was probably out there saying, no, there's going to be intervention. In a statement, Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel, I think Greg told us this one, said the 32 dead were members of the Cuban Military and Interior Ministry, the first apparent confirmation of longstanding U.S. assertions that Cuba's communist government, which has received oil and other economic support from Venezuela, provided personal security for Maduro. The Cubans were the first reported non-U.S. casualties in the operation. Several U.S. personnel suffered non-life-threatening injuries, U.S. officials have said. It's not clear how the U.S. will manage the complex diplomacy in Venezuela on a practical level. Trump said Saturday that a working group of top advisors was deeply engaged in planning for Venezuela's future, but even those roles and responsibilities appear unclear. Rubio is personally focused on the program, but his expansive portfolio as both Secretary of State and National Security Advisor means he is unlikely to have the time to steer the day-to-day policy, multiple officials said. Having dismantled much of the U.S. foreign policy infrastructure since he came to power, Trump depends on a small number of trusted personnel and business associates, yes, to handle core issues such as his peace plan in Gaza, negotiations between Ukraine and Russia, and now Venezuela. And you've probably already imagined or seen other people imagine that their fix for Venezuela will be a lot like their fix for Gaza. Why don't we develop the waterfront into mega resorts? I mean, Venezuelan waterfront, fronts to Aruba, Curacao, some real beautiful resort areas where there are lots of cruise ship traffic, etc. They might just imagine that if they rebuild the Venezuelan waterfront with luxury Trump towers, that all of that money will move there and then they'll be able to steal it. The National Security Council has bone gutted, and the administration has yet to nominate an assistant secretary of state to handle the Western Hemisphere. Don Roe Doctrine, etc. By the way, I thought it was very funny in some of Trump's the comment in which he mentions the Don Roe Doctrine, that he says other presidents, they kind of forgot about the Monroe Doctrine, but it's very important thing for a long time. And other presidents, they ignored it, but not me. I'm bringing it back. And no other presidents ignored it. Nobody did things quite the way you just did them, stupid and without a plan. But, as far as American interventionism in the hemisphere, I think I saw somebody threw out some statistic which seemed incredible, and so it may be, but saying something like, from the 1840s, 1850s, following, well after the establishment of the Monroe Doctrine, but I guess beginning with the establishment of the Monroe Doctrine further back, but that, from the mid 1800s through the mid 1900s, later into the, 2000, that something like that they toppled or intervened in a Latin American government on average once every 28 months or some crazy number like that. I don't know. I'll see if I can find that post as well. But anyway, I mean, there's been no shortage of intervention in Western Hemisphere affairs in a way that, by the way, has arguably got almost nothing to do with what Monroe actually meant by the Monroe Doctrine. It wasn't because it was usually the excuse, though, of foreign non-Western interference in the area. Well, the Soviets are setting up a base there, or the Soviets are backing this or that communist or communist-leaning regime, and maybe they were. But using that as an excuse to topple the government, I guess, counts as Monroe Doctrine. Anyway, the White House, it says, is weighing giving Stephen Miller, Trump's deputy White House chief of staff and Homeland Security advisor, a more elevated role in overseeing post-Maduro operations in Venezuela, according to one person with knowledge of the conversations who, like others, spoke on condition of anonymity. You know why. Miller has been the architect of the administration's anti-immigration and border policy and took a central role in the effort to remove Maduro. He was among a handful of top administration officials flanking the president during the news conference Saturday at Trump's Mar-a-Lago club. In Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, who served as vice president under Maduro until his capture, has been recognized by the armed forces, their armed forces, I guess, as acting president. Then I got to switch gears because I'm reading off of the big computer screen because that's where Greg left it, but that came later. Okay. Rodriguez spoke to Rubio after the Delta Force operation to capture the Venezuelan president and his wife in what Trump described as a friendly conversation. She offered a cautiously conciliatory statement addressing Trump on Sunday evening, and I guess you got to be cautious in addressing Trump at this particular moment, even if you don't want to be. President Donald Trump, our peoples in our region deserve peace and dialogue, not war, Rodriguez said, adding that she hoped she could work with the U.S. government on a cooperation agenda. Of course, Trump thinks this is peace, by the way. One of the things he babbled out on Air Force One was when they were asking him, so what is this really about? Is this war for oil, or is this a war to establish democracy in Venezuela? What's the story? And he said, it's peace. Peace on earth is what it's about. It's a war for peace, I guess. And that's kind of what we're stuck with. Man, woman, person, camera, peace on earth. Okay. Other officials in Venezuela have voiced harder sentiments. Venezuelan Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino Lopez, in televised remarks on Sunday alongside a group of military officials, described Maduro's capture as a, quote, cowardly kidnapping, and said a large part of Maduro's security team was killed in cold blood in the operation. He ordered the nation's forces to unify in the, quote, mission of confronting the imperial aggression and to ensure the freedom, independence, and sovereignty of the nation. Padrino is a powerful figure in Venezuela's military, which had been a source of support for Maduro. Trump administration officials have warned that Rodriguez could face more military action if she did not acquiesce to America's demands, with the president himself telling the Atlantic magazine on Sunday that she could pay a bigger price than Maduro, who is in detention awaiting trial on drug and gun trafficking charges in New York, by the way. That also of some interest. Somebody pointing out that one of the counts of the indictment against Maduro is possession of a machine gun, which, is that illegal for the president of Venezuela in Venezuela? I don't know. Not sure where that one's coming from. But, oh no, someone doesn't have gun rights. Trump said on Air Force One that he hasn't spoken yet with Rodriguez, though there are no longer U.S. troops on the ground in Venezuela, maybe. According to multiple U.S. officials, anyway, close to a dozen warships and scores of fighter jets, drones, and surveillance aircraft, along with approximately 15,000 troops, remain in the Caribbean and are standing by, like the Proud Boys, in case a second strike is directed by the president, according to a U.S. official. One Venezuelan business leader argued that the Trump administration was taking a pragmatic approach by working toward an orderly political transition. In recent months, the person said, U.S. officials appeared particularly interested in learning more about Rodriguez. He described Rodriguez as a pragmatic leader, eager to bring a new economic perspective, and who has built a team of people to inject fresh ideas to the socialist state founded by former President Hugo Chavez. And we all remember when Hugo Chavez was a little guy stealing our elections by buying, vote machine. Remember all the garbage that was part and parcel of, I guess, their propaganda campaign to drum up anger about Venezuela. And then they realized, this isn't really doing it. We'll have to come up with some other dumb thing. instead. No, Hugo Chavez didn't have anything to do with any of that nonsense, and no elections were stolen. Anyway, her defiant speech on Saturday, the person said, was likely a message directed to her own people and should not necessarily be read as an unwillingness to collaborate with the Trump administration. I think that's probably true. It may very well be that even if she has a deal of cooperation, that might include, you realize, Mr. President, this is Venezuela. I'm going to have to go on TV and say, we're still Venezuela and we're still independent and sovereign. Oh, yeah, you go ahead and do that. Just don't actually act that way. That might have been the agreement. In grabbing just Maduro and his wife and allowing most of the Venezuelan government to remain in place, the U.S. appears to be choosing a path, at least for the time being, that avoids the need for a sustained military presence in the country and the associated legal ramifications. They're out there saying this was not an invasion. This was not an extended military operation. This was a very precise operation that involved a couple of hours of action. Rubio told NBC's Meet the Press with Kristen Wilker on Sunday. Of course, if you put your troops in some place, that's an invasion. If it doesn't last a long time, good, but it's still an invasion. The day before, Trump had effectively dismissed the prospects of Venezuela's democratic opposition, including Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado, whose stand-in candidate, Edmundo Gonzalez, won more than two-thirds of the vote in an election last year that saw Maduro refuse to leave office. Awkward for Trump, of course. It'd be very tough for her. Oh, this is Trump, right? Greg told us it'd be very tough for her to be the leader, Trump said when asked about Machado on Saturday, adding that she doesn't have the support or the respect within the country because she stole my Nobel Peace Prize. Associates of Machado, who covertly escaped Venezuela last month with the help of the United States to attend the Nobel Prize ceremony in Norway, were caught off guard by Trump's comment, according to a person close to her team. On Sunday, she and her supporters once again urged the Venezuelan diaspora to rally in the streets. But with the two most prominent leaders outside of the country, Gonzalez fled to Spain last year after the election, and Machado's location is not known, there was little that they could do to mobilize a response inside Venezuela. And in that sense, Trump may have a point. One Venezuelan opposition leader who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss internal discussions said Trump's remarks were difficult for many in the opposition movement to hear. But, quote, in every transition, you have to swallow some bitter pills. That's probably true, especially one where they come in and grab your president and kill all of his bodyguards. That is going to be a bit of a bitter pill and make things difficult. And again, like with most of these operations, if the United States wanted to install these exiled leaders, they would have brought them in. But they didn't. This person said the next 48 hours could help clarify whether Rodriguez could usher in a soft transition by replacing hardline ministers, or rather continue Maduro's government with gringo guardianship. Two people close to the White House said the president's lack of interest, remember this, you heard this from Greg, in boosting Machado, despite her recent efforts to flatter Trump, stemmed from her decision to accept the Nobel Peace Prize, an award the president has openly coveted. It was open. Why didn't you give it to me? Although Machado ultimately said she was dedicating the award to Trump, her acceptance of the prize was an, quote, ultimate sin, said one of the people. If she had turned it down and said, I can't accept it because it's Donald Trump's, she'd be the president of Venezuela today. I don't know. But it sounds pretty crazy. U.S. officials have insisted that Venezuela's rich oil fields provide both incentive for Rodriguez to work with Washington and leverage if she refuses to play ball. But experts have been left puzzled by Trump's pledge to take over the Venezuelan oil industry, returning, quote, assets to U.S. companies whose contracts were voided when the industry was nationalized decades ago. A number of Western energy companies are already operating in Venezuela, including Chevron, Spain's Repsol, France's Maurel and Prom, and Italy's Eni. Let's hope. All right. Despite this, most of Venezuela's oil is purchased at a steep discount by China. Then, of course, there's the stuff that gets routed to Cuba as well. While Chevron exports to the United States under a license issued by the Trump administration, U.S. sanctions constrain how other companies pay for and ship oil, according to David Goldwyn, chairman of the Energy Advisory Group at the Atlantic Council think tank. What Trump is talking about is really new entrants into the market, Goldwyn said. But what they're going to want to know before they invest billions is that security and stability will last in Venezuela. Companies will make that decision based on whether it's a good investment over a timeline of a decade or more. And that brings us to the end of the article. At least we got it on the record. I know we're super late in getting out of Justice Putnam's way here. But, we'll make do. And hopefully it won't be too much of a problem. I just saw something flash across the screen that I thought I should scroll back and get, but it's way back there. Just in from Reuters. This is fun. Sure. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has announced that he will demote retired naval officer and sitting Senator Mark Kelly for reckless misconduct after the senator and other Democratic lawmakers urged troops to refuse any illegal orders. Well, that's just a fun development in this whole timeline. All right, as I said, time to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy next here on Netroots Radio. I should just jump out of the way, but let me at least tell you what he's got on tap. We'll be doing more of this, I'm sure, tomorrow. Trump's psychotic plan to cover up the Epstein files, you remember those? Is, of course, to invade every single country in the Western Hemisphere in order to steal its oil and resources. Next up, the children of slain Minnesota lawmaker Melissa Hortman want Trump to do what? Stop pushing the baseless conspiracy theory about her murder and apologize. Yes, he's telling everybody maybe Tim Walz had her murdered. And, of course, he'll just use the declination to run for governor again as evidence for his theory.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
One more thing. The MAGA activists on the 9th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals Tribunal ruled the California law prohibiting open carry of firearms in heavily populated counties is unconstitutional. And tech companies looking to plunge billions of dollars into the ever bigger data centers are losing fights in communities where people don't want to live next to them or even near them. We'll see you for more tomorrow.